Okay, Module 35, Renewable and Non-Renewable Resources and Global Energy Consumption. So our learning goals today are describe non-renewable energy resources characteristics, describe renewable energy resource characteristics, describe trends of energy use worldwide and in the United States, explain the importance of energy efficiency and conservation. Okay, so we're going to start with our first one. So fossil fuels, this is our non-renewable energy category. Okay, fossil fuels are derived from biological material fossilized millions of years ago. They consist of coal, oil, and natural gas, and currently provide the most energy used around the world. Okay, dead biomass from anaerobic environments anaerobic environments build up and is buried in sediment and forms these fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are also known as non-renewable energy sources because they are finite. This also includes nuclear energy. Okay, because there's only a certain amount of uranium is usually what they use. Okay, left. So eventually, nuclear energy won't be a viable option anymore either. Let's see. We use fossil fuels a lot because of their size to energy ratio. So that means it takes a small amount of or some small volume of this particular energy source, and you get a lot for it. So gasoline, even though we put gallons in our car, okay, it takes a relatively little amount of gasoline to make your car go. In comparison to like if you had a train where you had to put a bunch of coal in there, a bunch of wood, right, to create steam. Okay, so the energy is more efficient to the size of what we're trying to get the energy out of. So that's why we use a lot of oil and fossil fuels, just because it's a lot more energy efficient. Imagine having a wood burning stove on your car just to make it go. That'd be crazy. Okay? Yeah. So the next page in your notes is a common units of energy. So one that you should all be familiar with is calorie. Okay, if you've taken biology, we've talked about calories and biomolecules and things like that. So a calorie, the definition is the amount of energy it takes to heat 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. Okay. Common use is energy for food. So you look at nutrition labels or you look at the treadmill or whatever. Okay. And yeah, calorie with a capital C is 1,000 calories. Okay, so that's kind of good to know if it has a capital C or a lowercase c. Commonly, you'll see like kilocalories. Okay, that's kind of the same thing. The BTU, so if you do any cooking on a gas stove, you probably know the BTU, that's butane thermal unit. How many BTUs does it put out an hour? So that's the amount of energy it takes to heat 1 pound of water 1 degrees Fahrenheit, which is interesting because why would they not use Celsius for the British thermal unit? Weird. And then kilowatt hour. So that's the amount of energy expended by using 1 kilowatt or electricity for 1 hour. Okay, and we'll get into some of that a little bit later. But on all of your appliances that you buy, it usually tells you how much energy you use, and they like brag about energy saving. And if you go home and you look at your water heater, it'll say like kilowatts saved per year, and it gives you like a dollar amount. I think it'll be a yellow tag on there. Yes.
What the calories relate to each other? And what is it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure why we have two distinctions because typically, like calorie and food, but it also like you get calories from eating things. Your body's made of water, so like how much is that are you using for like body heat? I'm not sure how that relates honestly. Why they needed to just have a distinction between the two. All right, so 35.2, describe renewable energy resources, characteristics of other forms of energy that are considered infinite or renewable energy sources. These can be divided into two different categories. So potentially renewable resources that can be regenerated indefinitely if properly managed. Anybody have an idea of what that might be? Yep, say it. Trees. Good job. Okay, and then non-depletable, so resources that we cannot use up no matter the quantity or the rate of use. What's an example of that? Solar, yeah. Solar, wind, tide, all those things are never going away. It doesn't matter how much we use them. A potentially renewable resource, like I said, is trees. So the forest, if all the trees are cut down, you're not going to have a chance to repopulate. Water, so if a dam dries up, there's not going to be no water to power the system. Okay, so if it goes through desertification, yeah. Next page. Okay, there's an example of all of those resources. So non-renewable, you guys know natural gas, oil, coal, nuclear. I don't think there's ever been a generation more cognizant or aware of our non-renewable energy resources than you guys, because you've literally grown up with that being an issue your whole life. Potentially renewable, so biofuel and wood. So biofuel, okay, we're talking like they're making gasoline type things out of like plankton. That's pretty cool, right? Plankton repopulate really quickly, and if they manage correctly, we could run off plankton fuel, which is neat. And then non-depletable solar, okay, hydroelectric, geothermal, that kind of thing. Okay, typically you're not going to be able to use all those, even if you tried. Which brings us to our third standard: describe trends of energy use worldwide and in the United States. Energy resources are not distributed evenly around the world, making each nation or region use different resources. So globally, 80% of energy is produced by oil, coal, and natural gas. The developed nations of the world use more than 40% of the world's energy, even though they only comprise of 20% of the population. Okay, so of that oil, coal, and natural gas, 40% of it is being used by developed countries such as the United States, Germany, Japan, China, all of that. Even though we only have 20% of the world's population. So what is the rest of the world doing? Any idea? Okay, they're developing, and so what kind of fuels do you think they might be able to use? Huh? Wood? Okay, they're probably using wood to fire their kitchens or their stoves. They're using dung. Okay, they're using animal feces to light on fire. So a lot of your herbivores, their poop is really flammable, and it's good for heating houses and stuff like that. Yep. Okay. So there's kind of an idea of who's using the most. So I want you to talk to the person next to you. Why is China's total energy consumption high, but the per capita is kind of low? So you're going to need that graph on the right. Okay, why is China's energy consumption high, but their per capita is low? And go.
China has such a huge area that their overall energy consumption is high, but there's a lot of poor areas. They don't use much energy. So it's
Give me a picture that we're
Wait, is it just a
People. All right. You're having your thoughts up in 3, 2, and 1. Okay, someone tell me, why is China's energy consumption the most as a country, but not as per capita? Amani.
China's a huge country, so its energy is obviously going to be higher, but in many areas in China, they're not as developed and have lower economic standing, so their energy is lower.
Okay, that could be the reason why, yeah. So China is a giant country, it's got a lot of people, so it makes sense they have to use all that energy, right? And Amani's saying that not everybody uses the same amount of energy, right? So people in cities are probably using a lot more than maybe out in a rural village and that kind of thing. Okay, good. Sweet. So they are using less energy per person. Could be also too that in China you don't really have like freestanding houses as much as you do here. So they all use like apartment buildings and that kind of stuff. And so you're going to be saving a lot of energy closer you live with somebody. What would happen if? Why is Australia the opposite? So Australia is. Okay. It's the third one from the bottom. Why is their energy consumption so low, but per capita it's so high? So why is it the opposite of China? Ready? What?
If they have, I don't know how Australia is built, but if their people are more spread out, even if there's hardly not as many people as China, so they're not consuming as much power, they're consuming. Like each individual is consuming more than an individual in China.
Correct. Yeah. So each individual in Australia, according to this graph, is using more per person than the people are in China, but they have a lot less population, right? So overall, their energy consumption is lower just because there's not as much people, but they're not using it as responsibly maybe as people in China. Yeah. Boo. What would happen if China's per capita energy use matched the United States? What would happen to their energy consumption? Yeah, we go way up. It'd be 3 times as much, which is crazy. So, right now, as you are listening to me in an air-conditioned controlled building on your cell phone with your watch and your AirPods, think about how much energy you're just using right now. Yes.
So
We definitely have the worst impact on the environment, right?
Probably energy-wise, yes. Yeah. Right. So just this isn't necessarily like Faith brings up a good point. Like this isn't necessarily just like coal or natural gas and that kind of thing. It could be alternative because like in Kansas, in parts of Colorado and Nebraska, you have big solar or wind farms, right? Even in Colombia, you have solar farms and that kind of stuff. So it doesn't really take into account that. But that's a good question. Just good insight. Good job. All right, next. So in the United States, energy has transitioned from wood. We started as wood, okay, heating our houses and our teepees and all kinds of stuff, to coal, powering our trains, oil, and then now we're doing more natural gas. So if you have a gas stove or a gas water heater, okay, that's what it's talking about, natural gas, okay, propane. None of the resources ever stop being used entirely, but have diminished the amount of energy provided as compared to other resources. So you might still use wood to heat your house if you have a chimney or a wood stove in your house. Hey, I did growing up. It was part of the energy resources. Saves a lot of money if you have trees and that kind of stuff. Okay. None of the resources, I already read that. Energy can be varied regionally and seasonally. So for an example, coal remains primary fuel source in the western and southeastern states. Western and northern states use a mix of nuclear fuels, dams, and natural gases. Okay, so it can vary regionally and seasonally. Why would seasonally matter?
because in winter you use more energy than summer.
Okay, so living in this part of the United States, we use probably more energy in the summer and the winter time, right? Because we get the worst of the hot and the worst of the cold. Whereas if you were in Texas, you're probably going to use more in the summertime to get air conditioning, right? Okay. It can also be political. Okay, so if you are on the eastern or northern United States, what was the big thing that during the Trump administration they were fighting to reopen? What kind of power industry? It was coal, yeah. They were trying to open up coal mines, right? And what is the big deal when they're trying to put the pipelines in South Dakota?
I was on a.
Yeah, it was on Native American land, right? So those are things that are going to affect your energy consumption because now those folks that would maybe use that energy can't because it was going to degrade somebody's ancestral burial places, right? Okay, so all those things, even in your own country, can play a big part in what energy you can consume. Okay. Cool. Okay, there's your stacked graph in another pie chart. Okay, so we can see that predominantly we still use oil quite a bit, and natural gas make up over 70 or about 70% of the total energy we use. And renewable energy is only about 12%. We need to try to get this number up and these numbers down. The reason being is because we're going to run out. Okay, so this is a table showing you how much time we have left, years remaining approximately, if we don't find like new sources. So in the United States, we do actually have a lot of natural gas hanging out here. We have about 85 years left at our current usage rate. Do you think we're going to keep at our current usage rate? Probably not, right? So there's going to be two options. We're going to go up because our population is climbing. Okay, people at Capital City High School turn 16 every day, right? So that means that they're going to be closer to driving, that kind of stuff, okay? And then oil, coal, uranium, et cetera, et cetera. So Because non-renewable resources are finite, it's in our interest to estimate how much longer we can have on it. Okay, it's also a good idea for countries to estimate how much money they're willing to spend on trying to find these things. How can I find uranium? How can I find more natural gas, right? Estimates can vary due to assumptions made, but generally agreed upon goal is to reduce emissions from fossil fuels. Estimates may also change when new resources are discovered. Okay, so if we find another big oil well, obviously we're going to have more time left using our fossil fuels, right? If we find a uranium mine, we're able to run on nuclear forever. Okay? So that is kind of an image that shows you what is happening. So if you've ever driven, especially in this part of the United States, you see those like things that go up and down on the side of the road. And they're kind of in flat spots, right? Okay, they kind of look like this. Okay, when they're going down to get the petroleum. And as it's coming up, it's pulling things up. And it's feeding it into a tube, just like a, I guess a plunger. Okay, or like a thing you get shots with. What's that called? A syringe, yeah. So it's pulling it up, but instead of pushing back down, it goes into a tube and pulls more up. That's how that works. Okay, good. All right, so 35.3. So usage efficiency over these resources has increased over time. Conservation will extend for however many years these resources are available. In the U.S., total energy has leveled off, and energy intensity, which is the energy used per unit of gross domestic product, has been decreasing. Okay, so overall, that's saying that the United States is using less energy per person, but instead of declining, it's doing more level off because our population is growing. It's the same thing we just looked at with Australia versus China, right? Australia are using more per person, but they don't have as big a population. China is using less per person, but they have a giant population. Okay? So they balance each other out. Okay, so fossil fuels taking millions of years to form leads to speculation of when production will peak. This production of chemical reactions of oxygen and fossil fuels is called fossil fuel combustion, our energy, water, and carbon dioxide. Okay, so if you know anything about cars, then you know that you need oxygen and gas. Those things go boom. It gives you energy, which moves your car, and carbon dioxide, which comes out your tailpipe. And if you've ever seen like a car, it has like a condensation line. And so sometimes when you move your car, especially on hot days, you'll have a puddle of water underneath it, and that is from your engine running. Okay, could be from other things, but that's usually what it is. Okay, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas that's contributing to climate change. So the reduction of fossil fuels like oil is studied extensively. Okay, we understand that carbon dioxide is really good at trapping in heat, and so even the little amount that we have in the atmosphere is too much. Okay. So the next thing that you need to know is the Herbert curve. So this graph represents when the world oil production has reached maximum, leading to peak oil when there are more than half the reserves are in use. Some scientists think that we've already reached that point. Some scientists think that we don't. Some scientists don't care. They're just like, we gotta stop using this because it's affecting our environment, and so we will burn up before we actually even use all of our oil because it's getting too hot. Okay. So this is the Herbert curve. Okay, so oil production versus time, and like I said, a lot of scientists think we've already used it. Some scientists think that we'll never actually use it because if we keep relying on it, we'll either burn up or we'll have to switch to alternative fuels. Okay, 35.4, this is pretty important. So the end goal is to be able to use energy sustainably. So energy conservation and energy efficient must be employed. Okay, so energy conservation, your book makes a point, in my book, to make sure you understand the difference between these two things. So energy conservation is finding ways to use less energy. Okay, energy efficiency is finding ways to get the most out of the energies used. Okay, so can I maybe predict a better route to drive so I'm waiting in traffic less so I'm burning less fuel? Yes, right? Can I buy a car that actually gets better fuel efficiency? Yes. See how those two things are different? Yes. Okay. So the source of energy is dependent on the intended use. So transportation, you're going to use usually gasoline or diesel fuel from oil. Home energy, you can use wood, natural gas, or coal. Okay, we also know that we can use things like solar. That's becoming a lot more popular. They're cheaper. It's getting We don't really use wind energy in this part of the country, but maybe a little further west, probably most of your energy comes from wind. Okay, energy is lost in changing it from one form or another. Recall the first and second laws of thermodynamics. Okay, matter and energy can't be created or destroyed, but they will be converted into other things, and you're going to lose some along the way. Okay, and then energy return on investment, or EROEI. I'm not going to probably make you figure this out quite yet, but it's essentially energy obtained from fuel and energy invested to obtain the fuel. So, for example, like, is it worth me making lunch for myself? Am I that hungry that I'm going to spend the energy to make a sandwich? Right? If I'm a delivery driver, am I getting enough money as a delivery driver to pay my gas bill? That used to be always the debate. Well, you can't be a delivery driver because gas prices are too high. Now it's not really a problem, right? Or you hear that commercial on the radio about that app that you save money on gas. Like, you actually make money? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, okay, that's kind of what that is. So, is it worth my time looking for this energy? Is it going to save me any money or gain me any overall energy? This looks like a complicated formula, but really it's just percentage. It's not that hard. Okay, and then finally, explain the importance of increasing energy efficiency and conservation. So, there's a funny meme that I forgot to post on here, but essentially, like, so energy resources, so we have to find our energy. So for example, this is like a path of natural gas, or excuse me, oil, right? Okay, it costs us energy to get the oil up. We have to use big machinery, big drills, people, that kind of stuff. And then usually the energy is not where it needs to be, or we have a lot of energy, we can send it somewhere else, right? So we get a lot of our gasoline from the Middle East, right? Okay, that takes energy to get to us. We can't use it in current form. Okay, we have to refine it so our vehicles can use it. Okay. And then it either goes to a generator or diesel transportation waste. Okay, from there it's going to get electricity transmission and then the end user. Okay, so if you're driving an electric car in this part of the country, you're really doing a lot better than people with gas cars. Hard to tell, right? Okay, because the electricity to power your car, if you're powering it at home, it's still using fossil fuels, right? Yeah, that's kind of just an interesting thing to think about. Okay, questions, comments, concerns?
In terms of energy efficiency, right? Or
Not necessarily, yeah, energy efficiency, but also like it's probably still more efficient to drive an electric car.
because you're not, carbon monoxide.
Yeah.
Carbon emissions.
Yeah, but it's probably still just as harmful on the environment because while you're not polluting it with CO2, you're also like mining for lithium for your batteries. And then there still has to be something to create your energy unless you're running off solar. So just
So if it was a solar panel that was powering